We're all amidst challenging times right now. We fear for our safety, search for stability, and miss the life we were living a few short weeks ago. There are, as always, hidden gifts in these trying times. I have noticed that under this pressure, I am more aware than ever of what discomfort and fear feel like, even if mine is, in relation to others, not as unbearable. My skin is perhaps more sensitive to struggle, and I am less numbed to suffering. And this sensitivity reminds me of my responsibility to my community and my community's responsibility to the world. My biggest hurdle until now had been to overcome the violence done to my family from the Holocaust. Until recently, I had spent much of my energy protecting myself from the dangerous love of my father. His love could be explosive, judgmental, and unforgiving. He asked for far more than he could give and expected unlimited forgiveness in return. But on the eve of his death, I saw my father for who he was meant to be. One May day, we were told my dad had months to live as glioblastomas had taken over his brain. We chose to let him die gently and without intervention, as we were sure his suffering was not worth the extra minutes we might get with him. As my father faced his certain death, my sister vocalized that she could almost see virtual boulders become unlodged that would allow our love in and his love out. On the brink of the end of his life, he finally experienced all the love that had always been available to him. My sister, brother, his partner, my mother, his wife of 20 years, and I nursed him around the clock for 3 months and took him gently into the night in a way that was magical and beautiful and an absolute antithesis to the kind of love we had been allowed to give most of our lives. But what had made experiencing this precious love so impossible for my father? I did not begin to understand his shattered psyche until I sat at my great-uncle's funeral. His rabbi begged his broken family to accept that this difficult man was merely a byproduct of being a survivor. Moreover, he implored that to allow any fissures in the family to continue would be to continue to give power to Hitler. For a Holocaust is not simply an act done upon the generation at hand. The burdens of the Holocaust carried far forward through time. My father's mother was brutally murdered in her store in Berlin when my father was a toddler, and my father spent the next 7 years watching Berlin succumb to virulent anti-Semitism. Thanks to a dedicated cousin in New York who advocated for their safety, he escaped with his father, new stepmother, and sister in 1939, leaving behind a large family in Poland that all but perished. With an understandable but neurotic Jewish self-loathing, my father self-isolated from the tight-knit Jewish community of Berlin and then from the garment district to which he emigrated. Being a Jew had cost him everything. And his relationship with his Jewish identity was tortured and fractured. I was born in Israel, but that pretty much ended my immersion in Jewish culture. By the age of 1.5, we were worlds away in a sterile suburb in Toronto. We were raised outside the vibrant Jewish neighborhoods around us, and most of our family was murdered in the Holocaust, so we had almost no mishpucha. I never connected that my father was even a Holocaust survivor until sometime in college. Because he escaped as a 9-year-old, he did not allow himself the privileged status of even being a Holocaust survivor, though his mother and extended family were murdered, and he was raised in Berlin, the rotten core of anti-Semitic Germany that bred his own self-loathing. Because of this, my Jewish identity was tenuous and hard-won. Moving to the tri-state area after college, I was once again reintroduced to my Jewish roots. I learned a little Yiddish. I forged a Jewish identity for my family with my non-Jewish husband through his and my dedication to ancestors we never had the privilege of meeting. It is in this loneliness of being, especially on holidays, when the large Jewish family I was meant to have is especially missed. And it is this loneliness that drives me to become a force of remembrance. So what does that mean in this day and age? On my father's deathbed, he shared a story of almost being killed as a young child. A car aimed for him and tried to run him down. He was injured, but thankfully survived. He knew as a young child that he had been targeted. When he tried to retell the story toward the end of his days, I had a hard time understanding it, or even piecing together these horrible and incredible facts. When I finally recounted to him what I understood and told it back to him, he looked physically relieved to leave it behind. It was his gift, and perhaps his burden to me. He left it so it would serve me, serve us, as a reminder that humankind, with all its beauty, is also capable of a kind of cruelty that leaves adults in cars trying to run down small children in a misguided attempt at bettering the world, and leaves generations to come searching for a whole and kind love, absent of cruelty, anxiety, and self-loathing. I have a sweet relationship with my father now. It is perhaps more precious to me now than when he was alive. I find comfort in his continued presence in my life. I feel in the way the wind dances just when I need him the most. More importantly, I hear him ask me if there was more I could be doing, more I could be giving to those in need and to those who suffer. I am left with the best of this man who suffered so greatly in his life. But he and I deserve more, as does any community that suffers massive trauma at the hands of another. We must continue to search for community as Jews, because our shared memory is not just our burden, it is the power we can harness for change. From our shattered path, we must move forward and not forget our empathy must be our heartbeat, and tikkun olam, our constant.